If you ask what the most terrifying animal on Earth is, our minds immediately conjure up images of fierce predators, the deadly hiss of a venomous snake, or the silent approach of a spider. These creatures bring a primal dread deep into our core. We shiver at the cold, emotionless stare of a beast lurking in the deep water, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Yet when we look closely at the cold, hard data, a completely different truth emerges from the ancient shadows, an unexpected, unsettling, and deeply haunting revelation of our nature. The most frightening creature to ever exist is us. No other being on this planet has caused so much misery and ultimate ruin for its own kind as the profound darkness we inflict upon one another. Every single year, countless individuals fall under the heavy hands of their own peers, a number that only counts direct and intentional harm. Millions more fade away unintentionally through endless, bitter conflicts, or the silent spread of disease and scarcity born from endless struggles over territory, resources, and absolute power. It is not merely the overwhelming volume, but the intricate, calculated, and often meaningless nature of human actions that cannot be matched by any wild beast. So, let us turn back the hands of time into the abyss. The illusion of safety in our modern, illuminated cities is merely a fragile glass shield against our own nature. We lock our heavy doors at night, not to keep out the wandering wolves or the howling wind, but to shield our families from the individuals who share our exact appearance, our exact mind, our own kin. Look closely at the flat, unforgiving line of a modern medical monitor and see it shift into ancient tally marks carved deep into a cold cave wall. Statistics tell a chilling story. Every single year, countless souls are abruptly taken from this world by the intentional, calculated actions of their very own peers. This number completely ignores the millions more who fade away in the silent aftermath of massive, organized conflicts and the complete collapse of once great empires. We assume that civilization brought peace, and the ancient past was just a wild, untamed wilderness. Yet, as we dig deeper into the soil of our ancestors, the dark earth reveals a horrifying narrative. When humanity stopped wandering and began to plant the first seeds, we unknowingly planted the deep roots of organized, systematic ruin. The time machine shatters. Welcome to the first civilized era. The Neolithic era is often romanticized as the dawn of progress, a golden age where humanity finally settled down and embraced the gentle rhythm of farming. We picture peaceful fields, golden sunlight, and the gentle stroke of a hoe nurturing the rich soil. But the reality hidden beneath that very soil is entirely different, stained with deep shadows. The peaceful stroke of the farmer's tool quickly morphs into the heavy, unforgiving swing of a stone axe. Agriculture did not bring universal peace. It brought the concept of property, accumulation, and pure greed. Suddenly, for the very first time in history, there was something worth defending, and something deeply tempting to take by overwhelming force from those who had gathered it. The human population began to decline rapidly, plunging into what scientists call a genetic bottleneck, a severe event that wiped out countless lineages, erasing entire generations from the fabric of existence. Across the globe, modern archaeologists began uncovering not the remains of prosperous, happy villages, but vast, silent pits filled with the remnants of mass coordinated tragedy. These were not small, random clashes between wandering groups searching for a way forward, but large-scale eradications, leaving hundreds of fallen figures resting together in the cold, dark earth. Yet the darkest site discovered was not a battlefield. It was a place of a much more sinister nature. In southwestern Germany lies Herxheim, a name that echoes with a profound and bone-chilling silence. Here, the earth did not yield ancient crops or simple tools. It yielded over 1,000 fallen individuals. They were not laid to rest with honor, but cast into pits like discarded, unwanted items. An examination of the remains revealed a chaotic, prolonged event. They were struck by many different implements, a heavy axe descending repeatedly, fragmenting the history of men, women, and even the smallest young ones. But the true horror emerged from their origins. They were not locals. They were brought from hundreds of kilometers away. This was no mere territorial clash. It was a deliberate, organized gathering for a sinister, systematic end. And the ordeal did not conclude when their breath finally ceased in the darkness. The bones were meticulously separated, bearing the unmistakable marks of a gruesome, deliberate feast. A modern dinner table is set with gleaming utensils and fine porcelain, morphing into sharp flintstones, carefully stripping away sustenance over a crackling fire. The most disturbing detail lies in the treatment of the mind's fortress. The skull. Split with terrifying precision, the top halves were preserved and smoothed into hollow vessels. A crystal glass swirls with deep red wine under warm candlelight, shifting to a hollowed bone vessel, held in trembling hands to complete an unimaginable ancient ritual. While some ancient atrocities were born of a desperate need to survive, others were meticulously woven into the very fabric of early civilization. In the deep shadows of an ancient Egyptian courtyard, a chilling discovery was unearthed. 12 human hands, entirely separated from their owners, buried with eerie precision. They were not fallen soldiers left on a chaotic battlefield, but carefully curated offerings. Introduced by a powerful ruling dynasty, a gruesome new currency was established in the empire. The physical grasp of a defeated rival was taken and exchanged directly for glowing gold. A modern businessman elegantly counts crisp, freshly printed paper money in his hands, morphing into a ruthless ancient soldier, dropping preserved human hands at the foot of a grand throne. It became a twisted competition among the elite, a race to see who could accumulate the most dark trophies. Cruelty was no longer just an act of war. It had evolved into a symbol of high status. Even more terrifying, modern analysis of the finger proportions revealed a grim truth. The victims were not solely men in combat. At least one belonged to a woman. Brutality did not discriminate. It only demanded payment in flesh. If civilization created such calculated cruelty, then where did our primal malice truly begin? To find the very root of deliberate malice, we must dig deeper, past the empires, past the early farms. In a dark, silent cave in Transylvania, a single fragment of a skull was found resting quietly among bare bones. At first glance, the heavy fracture looked like a mere misfortune, perhaps a tragic fall from a high cliff. But advanced forensic shadows revealed a chillingly precise, undeniable truth hidden in the bone. A modern individual carelessly drops a sleek glass smartphone, watching the screen shatter upon the hard concrete floor, morphing into a heavy, jagged stone, forcefully descending twice upon the right side of an ancient human head. The two identical marks mean it was not a random falling rock. It was a deliberate, rapid action. Judging by the angle and the immense force, the standing figure struck directly from the front, wielding their dark intent firmly in their left hand, delivering the oldest recorded heavy impact of fatal intent. This single broken bone proves that targeted malice has lived deep within our timeline for at least 30,000 years. Yet, individual fury is just a spark. What happens when the spark meets a dry, dying landscape? When the rains fail and the rivers shrink, the isolated encounters slowly evolve into something far worse. The population grows, resources vanish, and the terrible reward for coordinated aggression becomes too tempting to ignore. A singular act of ancient malice is terrifying, but an orchestrated eradication is an evolutionary nightmare. We now travel to the arid sands of the Nile, where innocence was targeted not by chance, but by design. Jebel Sahaba, an ancient site along the Nile, where the harsh reality of survival is permanently etched into the earth. Here, researchers uncovered a narrow space holding 60 individuals, all bearing the unmistakable marks of overwhelming force. At first, it appeared to be a standard clash between rival warriors fighting for honor or land. But the shadows revealed a far more devastating narrative, sparing absolutely no one in their path. Among the fallen were the youngest, most fragile members of the group, their small frames shattered by multiple projectiles. Small, sharp stone fragments were found deeply embedded within their structure, proving they were struck repeatedly by a relentless storm of arrows and spears from a distance. A modern lawn sprinkler sprays refreshing water over a lush green yard, bringing joy and life, morphing into a terrifying barrage of sharp wooden shafts, raining down upon defenseless, small silhouettes in the dust. This was not a battle. It was a calculated ambush upon a community unable to protect itself. During this exact period, the vibrant Nile Valley was drying up rapidly, turning into a ruthless wasteland. Resources vanished, leaving only the desperate thirst of the desert. When faced with total collapse, they did not unite to share the burden and survive the drought. They chose to eradicate their neighbors, securing the remaining water by removing the hands that might reach for it. Homo sapiens proved ruthless, but the seed of this darkness was planted long before our species even existed. The illusion that brutality is an exclusive trait of modern humans shatters completely when we descend into the deep, echoing caverns of Atapuerca in Spain. Here, a massive natural shaft known as the Pit of Bones holds a mesmerizing, overwhelming sight. Thousands of ancient skeletal frames from various early human lineages are entangled in the deep earth. A modern subway station is packed tightly with exhausted commuters standing shoulder to shoulder, morphing into a dense, silent layer of ancient figures resting eternally within the cold mud. Was it a natural accumulation or a deliberate, organized resting place for the fallen? But the most infamous discovery at Atapuerca lies hidden in another chamber, known as TD6. Beneath the mundane layers of tools and animal remains, investigators uncovered a systematic tragedy. The ancient frames here bore the undeniable, repeated marks of being processed for sustenance. Yet the most disturbing revelation was not the act of consumption itself. It was the specific targets they chose. There were no fully grown adults among the victims. The fallen were entirely composed of the smallest, most vulnerable young ones, hunted like common prey. A dark shadow stalks a small, fragile silhouette through the thick, prehistoric brush. And the most terrifying part? They did not do this out of starvation. If the valleys were full of game and the rivers flowed freely, then hunting the vulnerable was not an act of survival. It was a choice. It was the birth of an exclusively human trait, finding twisted satisfaction in unnecessary ruin. A modern figure sits motionless in the dark, bathed in the blue light of a screen, morphing into an ancient face, illuminated by a crackling fire, eyes wide with a terrifying thrill. We see this primal darkness vividly at a site in Germany, known as Schückenstein. Here, researchers found dozens of fallen villagers, their tragic end accompanied by a baffling detail. Almost half of them had their lower leg bones systematically crushed into small fragments. This was not the work of a swift clash. It was prolonged, deliberate torment. Some scholars suggest it was early sadism, a psychological craving to break another being entirely. Others believe it was a paranoid ritual, binding the fallen so their spirits could not seek revenge. Whichever the truth, the result remains a permanent scar on our evolutionary chart. When placed alongside all other mammals, primates rank highest in hostility toward their own. And sitting at the very peak of that dark red spectrum is us. Are we doomed to carry this curse forever? Or is there something else hiding in the ashes? Yet, amidst the most overwhelming darkness of our history, a different kind of flame refused to die. Archaeology does not only uncover shattered bones and heavy stones, it also unearths profound tenderness. We find ancient resting places where the fallen were laid down with delicate care, surrounded by gathered flowers. They huddled around the fire, not just to plan their hunts, but to warm the trembling hands of their kin. A modern figure gently pulls a soft blanket over a sleeping young one in a quiet room, morphing into a rough, prehistoric hand, carefully shielding a fragile flame from a raging blizzard to protect a family. This is the terrifying, beautiful duality of our species. We carry the deep roots of absolute ruin, bound tightly together with an infinite capacity for love, sacrifice, and unexpected grace. We are the most dangerous entity to ever walk the earth, but we are also the only one capable of looking in the mirror. We are the only beast that can feel profound regret at its own reflection and decide to change course. The future of our timeline is not a pre-written destiny. It is a completely blank page, waiting for the deliberate choices we make in this exact, fleeting moment. Two timelines converge, the modern grip and the ancient hand, both slowly releasing their heavy burdens. The shadows retreat entirely, leaving only the profound weight of our own existence in the light. The ultimate question remains: who will you choose to be?